The gunshot echoed through the marble hallways of the mansion, followed by the heavy thud of a body hitting the floor. Jin-Ho didn't flinch as he lowered his weapon, his cold eyes fixed on the man who had dared to betray him. Blood pooled beneath the corpse, spreading across the pristine white tiles like spilled wine. His men stood frozen, waiting for orders, their faces masks of practiced indifference. This was their world. This was Tuesday. "Clean it up," Jin-Go said, his voice devoid of emotion. He turned and walked away, his expensive leather shoes clicking against the floor with measured precision. Behind him, his men scrambled to dispose of the evidence, their movements efficient and rehearsed. They had done this 100 times before. Jin-Ho made his way to his office, a vast room dominated by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city below. Seoul sparkled in the evening light, a tapestry of neon and glass that represented everything he controlled. He was the king of this concrete jungle, the invisible hand that moved millions of dollars through shadowy channels, the name whispered in fear in every dark corner of the underworld. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, the amber liquid catching the last rays of sunlight. 32 years old, and he had never known anything but this life. His father had ruled before him, and his grandfather before that. The Kim family legacy was written in blood and power, and Jin-Ho had inherited it all when his father was assassinated 5 years ago. He had been ruthless in consolidating his control, eliminating rivals with surgical precision, building an empire that stretched from Seoul to Shanghai, from Tokyo to Hong Kong. As he drank, his eyes fell on the calendar on his desk. February 14th was circled in red. Valentine's Day. He felt nothing but contempt for the date. It was a day for weak men, for fools who believed in love and romance, for people who had the luxury of feeling something other than the weight of command. Jin-Ho had learned long ago that emotions were liabilities. Love made you vulnerable. Attachment made you predictable. And in his world, predictability meant death. He had watched men fall because they loved someone. His own father had nearly been compromised when his mother was kidnapped. The old man paid the ransom, shown weakness, and it had cost him dearly. 3 years later, a rival gang had exploited that same weakness, using his mother as bait to lure his father into an ambush. Jin-Ho was 27 when he found both his parents dead, and he had sworn then that he would never allow emotion to cloud his judgment. His phone buzzed. It was his second in command, Min-Soo, a grizzled veteran who had served his father and now served him with unwavering loyalty. "Boss, we have a situation," Min-Soo's gravelly voice came through the speaker. "There's a woman at the gate, says she needs to see you, claims she's connected to the park operation." Jin-Ho's jaw tightened. Park Dong-jun was the leader of the Busan faction, a rival gang that had been encroaching on his territory for months. They had been at an easy truce, but tensions were high. Why would someone connected to Park be at his gate? "What does she want?" Jin-Ho asked. "She says she has critical intelligence about Park's operations, says she needs protection and is willing to trade information for sanctuary. Boss, she's American, black woman, mid-20s, showed up alone, very bold." Jin-Ho considered this. It could be a trap. It probably was a trap. But if it wasn't, having someone with inside knowledge of Park's operation could give him the leverage he needed. "Bring her in," he said, "but search her thoroughly and keep armed guards on her at all times." "Understood, boss." 10 minutes later, Jin-Ho watched from his office window as a black sedan pulled up to the front entrance. His men emerged first, scanning the perimeter, then opened the rear door. A woman stepped out. And even from 3 stories up, Jin-Ho could see that she was striking. Her rich dark brown skin moved with a confidence that seemed almost defiant given the circumstances. Her natural hair was styled in long box braids that fell past her shoulders, and she wore a black leather jacket over dark jeans. She didn't look frightened. She looked determined. Jin-Ho felt a flicker of curiosity, quickly suppressed. He had learned not to be curious about women. They were distractions at best, weapons used against him at worst. A few minutes later, there was a knock on his door. "Come in," he said, settling into his chair behind the massive mahogany desk. The door opened, and she entered, flanked by 2 of his guards. Up close, she was even more striking. Her eyes were dark brown and intelligent, her features strong and beautiful. She looked at him without fear, meeting his gaze directly with an intensity that matched his own. Most people couldn't hold his stare for more than a few seconds. She didn't look away. "You may leave us," Jin-Ho told his guards. They hesitated, then obeyed, closing the door behind them. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit." She moved gracefully, settling into the chair with the poise of someone accustomed to navigating dangerous situations. "Thank you for seeing me," she said. Her voice was smooth and cultured, with an unmistakable American accent, refined, educated, East Coast perhaps. "You claim to have intelligence about Park Dong-joon," Jin-Ho said in English, his accent crisp and clear from years of international business dealings. "Prove it." She reached into her jacket pocket, moving slowly so he wouldn't think she was reaching for a weapon. She pulled out a USB drive and slid it across the desk. "Everything's on there. Communications, financial records, shipping manifests, personnel files, 3 years' worth of data from Park's operation." Jin-Ho studied her carefully. "And who are you to have access to such information?" "My name is Mia Chen Williams," she said. "My mother is Korean-American, my father was Black. I've been working as a financial consultant for various businesses in Seoul for the past 3 years. What most people don't know is that I've been using that cover to gather intelligence on Park's money laundering operations." "Why?" Jin-Ho asked. Mia's expression hardened. "Because Park killed my mother. She worked for one of his legitimate businesses, discovered evidence of his illegal activities, and threatened to go to the authorities. He had her killed and made it look like a car accident. I've spent the last 3 years building a case against him, gathering evidence, learning his operation inside and out. But I realize that evidence won't be enough. He has too many connections, too much money. The system won't touch him." "So you came to me," Jin-Ho said. "So I came to you," Mia confirmed. "You're the one person with the power to actually take him down, and I'm willing to give you everything I have in exchange for your protection and your help in destroying him." Jin-Ho leaned back in his chair, studying her. She was smart. She had clearly thought this through. But she was also an outsider, an American, someone who didn't fully understand the rules of his world. "What makes you think I won't simply take your information and kill you to eliminate any loose ends?" "Because that's not your style," Mia said, her voice steady. "I've done my research on you, Jin-Ho. You're ruthless, but you're not wasteful. You don't eliminate assets that could be useful. And I can be very useful. I speak 5 languages. I have advanced degrees in finance and international business. I understand global money movements, and I've spent 3 years learning how Park operates. I'm offering you not just information, but expertise." Jin-Ho found himself almost impressed. Almost. "You're assuming I'll let you stay. You're assuming I trust you." "I'm not assuming anything," Mia said. "I'm offering you a business proposition. You get intelligence and skills that will help you eliminate a rival. I get protection and revenge. It's a straightforward transaction." Jin-Ho was silent for a long moment, weighing his options. She was right that having her intelligence could be valuable, but she was also a potential liability, a distraction, and he didn't do distractions. Finally, he pressed the intercom button on his desk. "Min-soo, prepare one of the guest rooms in the East Wing. Ms. Chen will be staying with us for the time being, 24-hour guard." He released the button and looked at Mia. "You'll stay here where I can keep an eye on you. You don't leave the mansion without my permission. You don't make phone calls without my approval. You don't speak to anyone outside this house. Break any of these rules, and I'll deliver you to Park personally. Understood?" "Understood," she said, standing. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," Jin-Ho said coldly. "You're not a guest. You're an asset, and assets only have value as long as they're useful." If his words stung, she didn't show it. She simply nodded and allowed herself to be escorted out by Min-soo. After she left, Jin-Ho returned to the window, looking out over the city. He inserted the USB drive into his computer and began reviewing the files. Everything she had claimed was there. Detailed records of Park's operation, communications, financial transactions. It was a goldmine of intelligence. Either she was exactly who she claimed to be, or this was the most elaborate trap he had ever encountered. Time would tell which. If you're enjoying the story so far, hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you think Jin-Ho should do with Mia. Should he trust her or not? The next few days passed in a tense routine. Mia was given a comfortable room in the East Wing, but she was essentially a prisoner. Guards stood outside her door at all times. Her meals were brought to her. She was not allowed to wander the mansion freely. Jin-Ho had made it clear that while she was under his protection, she was also under his control. But Mia didn't seem bothered by the restrictions. She spent her time reading, doing yoga in her room, and occasionally requesting specific books or materials. She was calm, composed, seemingly content with her situation. It made Jin-Ho suspicious. No one was that comfortable being held captive. On the third day, he decided to test her. He had Min-Soo bring her to his office after dinner. She arrived wearing a simple gray sweater and black pants, her braids pulled back to a ponytail. She looked composed, professional, ready for business. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. She obeyed, folding her hands in her lap.
"I've been reviewing your data," Jin-Ho began. "It's impressive, thorough, but information is only valuable if I know how to use it. I want your assessment. What's Park's biggest vulnerability?" Mia didn't hesitate. "His arrogance. Park believes he's untouchable because he's maintained power in Busan for so long. He's gotten sloppy. He meets with the Yakuza representatives in 4 days to finalize a major partnership. The meeting is scheduled at one of his warehouses in Busan. He's planning to show them his operation, demonstrate his smuggling routes, and formalize their alliance." "How do you know this?" Jin-Ho asked. "Because I have access to his communications," she said. "Before I left, I installed monitoring software on his systems. I've been tracking his messages, his calls, his calendar. I know everything he's planning." Jin-Ho raised an eyebrow. "You've been spying on a mafia boss for 3 years?" "I've been protecting myself and gathering evidence," Mia corrected. "When you're hunting someone dangerous, you need to know their every move. That's not just survival, that's strategy." Jin-Ho pulled up his laptop and pushed it across the desk. "Show me. Prove you have access." Mia took the laptop and quickly typed in a series of commands, accessing a secure server through multiple proxies. Within seconds, she had pulled up a dashboard showing recent communications from Park's devices. Jin-Ho leaned forward, reading the messages. They confirmed everything she had said. The meeting was scheduled for February 14th, Valentine's Day. "This is excellent intelligence," Jin-Ho admitted, "but it still doesn't tell me how you plan to use it." "That's where you come in," Mia said. "You intercept the meeting. You arrive before the Yakuza representatives, you take control of the warehouse, and you present them with a better offer. According to my research, you have deeper connections in China than Park does. You have access to shipping routes and distribution networks he can only dream of. You offer them a real partnership, one where they don't have to rely on an unstable middleman." "And what about Park?" Jin-Ho asked. "You eliminate him," Mia said simply. "Not immediately, not at the meeting, that would be too obvious. But you take away his leverage, his alliances, his power base. You leave him with nothing. And then, when he's vulnerable, you finish it." Jin-Ho considered this. It was bold, it was risky, but it could work. If he could pull it off, he would not only eliminate Park, but also gain a powerful ally in the Yakuza while simultaneously absorbing the Busan territory. "Why are you helping me?" Jin-Ho asked suddenly. "You could have taken this information to the authorities. You could have gone to the Americans, your own people. Why come to me?" For the first time, Mia's composed expression flickered with emotion. Pain. Anger. "Because the authorities wouldn't do anything. I tried that route first. I gave the FBI everything I had. They thanked me for the information and told me they'd look into it. That was 18 months ago. Nothing happened. No investigation, no arrests, nothing. Park has too many connections, too much money. The system doesn't work against people like him. She leaned forward, her dark eyes intense. But you work outside the system. You have the power to actually make him pay. And honestly, I want him to know it's coming. I want him to see his empire crumble. I want him to feel afraid. The way my mother must have felt in her last moments. Jin-Ho understood that feeling. He had seen plenty of people betrayed by systems that were supposed to protect them. "All right," he said. "I'll consider your plan. But first, I need to verify your intelligence. I'll have my people do some reconnaissance on the warehouse. If everything checks out, we'll move forward." "Thank you," Mia said, standing to leave. "One more thing," Jin-Ho said, stopping her. "You said your mother was Korean American. What was her name?" Mia's expression softened slightly. "Hannah Chen. She immigrated to the U.S. when she was 20, met my father in New York, and they built a life together. After my father died, she wanted to reconnect with her roots, so we moved to Korea. She thought it would be good for both of us. Instead, it got her killed." "I'm sorry for your loss," Jin-Ho said, and he was surprised to find he meant it. "Thank you," Mia said quietly, "but sympathy won't bring her back. Justice will." After she left, Jin-Ho sat alone in his office, thinking. There was something about Mia that intrigued him, a combination of intelligence, determination, and barely controlled rage that he recognized in himself. She was dangerous in her own way, and he found himself respecting that. Over the next few days, Jin-Ho threw himself into planning the operation. His reconnaissance team confirmed that Park was indeed preparing for a major meeting at the warehouse. The Yakuza representatives had been spotted arriving in Busan. Everything Mia had told him was accurate. She had proven herself valuable. But something had changed. Jin-Ho found himself thinking about her more than he should, not in a romantic sense. He had no room for such things, but as a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. She was smart, resourceful, and had a kind of focused intensity that was rare in his world. She reminded him of a chess player, always thinking several moves ahead.
On the evening of February 13th, the day before the operation, Jin-Ho was working late in his office when there was a knock on the door. "Come in," he called. To his surprise, it was Mia. She was wearing a red dress, simple but elegant, and she carried a small wrapped box. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," she said, "but I wanted to give you something before tomorrow." Jin-Ho frowned. "I don't accept gifts." "It's not really a gift," she said, setting the box on his desk. "Consider it a gesture of appreciation for giving me a chance when you didn't have to." Against his better judgment, Jin-Ho opened the box. Inside was a single red rose. He stared at it, confused. "What is this?" "It's Valentine's Day tomorrow," Mia said softly. "I know you don't celebrate it. I know you probably think it's ridiculous. But I wanted you to have this anyway, because despite everything, despite this dark world we're both living in, I think everyone deserves to experience a moment of beauty, a moment where they remember that there's more to life than just revenge and survival." Jin-Ho looked at the rose, then at her. "You're wasting your time. I don't care about things like this." "Maybe not," she said, "but maybe you should. Because the thing about beauty, Jin-Ho, is that it reminds us what we're fighting for. You've built an empire, but what's the point if you never allow yourself to experience anything beyond power and control?" "Enjoyment is a luxury I can't afford," he said harshly. "No," Mia said, her voice firm. "That's what you tell yourself to justify the walls you've built. But those walls don't protect you, Jin-Ho. They isolate you. And if you let this life strip away everything that makes you human, then you're no different from the men you've killed. You're just another monster in an expensive suit." Her words hit harder than he expected. Jin-Ho had never allowed anyone to speak to him like that. He should have been angry. He should have put her in her place. But instead, he just looked at the rose, at the delicate petals, at the vibrant red that seemed to glow in the dim light of his office. "Why do you care?" he asked quietly. "You barely know me." "Because I see myself in you. I know what it's like to build walls so high that nothing can get in. I know what it's like to convince yourself that you don't need anything or anyone because needing means being vulnerable, and being vulnerable means being hurt. But it's lonely, Jin-Ho, and life is too short to spend it alone in a fortress of your own making." Before he could respond, she turned and left, closing the door softly behind her. Jin-Ho sat in silence, staring at the rose. He picked it up, felt the smoothness of the petals, the sharp prick of a thorn. It was beautiful. It was also dangerous, just like her. For the first time in years, Jin-Ho allowed himself to wonder what his life might be like if he made different choices, if he allowed himself to feel something other than cold calculation. But then he set the rose down and pushed the thought away. Tomorrow was too important. He couldn't afford distractions. Valentine's Day arrived gray and cold, the sky threatening rain. Jin-Ho rose early, dressing in a black suit and checking his weapon. He gathered his top men, Min-Soo and 8 others, all experienced, all loyal. They loaded into 3 vehicles and began the drive to Busan. Mia had asked to come along, but Jin-Ho had refused. It was too dangerous, he told her. But the truth was that he didn't want her there when things got violent. He didn't want to see him do what he was about to do. It was irrational, this desire to protect her from the reality of his world, but he couldn't shake it. The warehouse was located in an industrial district near the port. It was a nondescript building surrounded by similar structures, all rusted metal and cracked concrete. Perfect for illegal operations. Jin-Ho's team arrived an hour before the scheduled meeting, parking their vehicles out of sight and approaching on foot. They moved silently, professionally, taking out Park's guards one by one. Jin-Ho had given strict orders, no unnecessary killing. They needed Park alive for this to work. The guards were knocked unconscious and bound, hidden away where they wouldn't interfere. Inside the warehouse, they found Park Dong-jun supervising preparations. He was a stocky man in his 50s, with graying hair and cold eyes. He looked up in shock as Jin-Ho and his men entered, weapons drawn. "Kim Jin-Ho," Park said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "What is the meaning of this?" "Change of plans," Jin-Ho said calmly, gesturing for his men to secure the area. "You won't be meeting with the Yakuza today. I will." Park's face darkened. "You dare interfere with my business? Do you have any idea what you're starting?" "I know exactly what I'm starting. I'm ending your operation in this city. Your territory, your connections, your deals, they all belong to me now, including your arrangement with the Yakuza." "They'll never deal with you," Park spat. "We had an agreement." "You had an agreement," Jin-Ho corrected, "but agreements are only as good as the terms, and I have better terms."
Before Park could respond, the door opened and 3 men entered. They were Japanese, dressed in expensive suits, moving with the confident grace of dangerous men, the Yakuza representatives. Their leader, a tall man with silver hair and a scar across his left cheek, took in the scene with shrewd eyes. "Kim Jin-Ho," the man said in accented Korean. "We were expecting Park-san. This is unexpected." "Mr. Takahashi," Jin-Ho greeted him, recognizing the man from intelligence reports. "My apologies for the surprise, but I'm afraid Park-san has been unreliable. I'm here to offer you a better partnership." Takahashi's eyes flickered to Park, who was being held at gunpoint by 2 of Jin-Ho's men, then back to Jin-Ho. "Better how?" Jin-Ho spent the next 20 minutes laying out his proposal. He had access to shipping routes through Shanghai that could cut the Yakuza's transportation costs by 30%. He had connections with suppliers in Thailand and Myanmar that could provide higher quality products at lower prices. He had political contacts in Seoul who could smooth over legal complications. Everything he offered was backed by hard data, by proof that he could deliver what he promised. Takahashi listened carefully, occasionally asking pointed questions. Jin-Ho answered each one with precision, demonstrating his knowledge of the Yakuza's operations, their needs, their weaknesses. He was offering them not just a partnership, but a solution to problems they hadn't even voiced yet. "Impressive, Kim-san," Takahashi said. "You've done your homework. Very thorough." He turned to Park, whose face had gone pale. "It seems our business with you is concluded, Park-san. You should have been more careful about your operations." Before Park could protest, Takahashi turned back to Jin-Ho and extended his hand. "We have a deal." Jin-Ho shook his hand, feeling a surge of satisfaction. He had done it. He not only destroyed Park's deal, but also gained a powerful ally. The Busan faction would crumble without the Yakuza's support, and Jin-Ho would fill the void. Park was left under guard while Jin-Ho and the Yakuza representatives discussed the details of their new arrangement. It took another hour to finalize everything, to establish timelines and protocols and points of contact. By the time they were finished, it was mid-afternoon and the rain had started to fall. Takahashi and his men departed, leaving Jin-Ho with Park. The older man glared at him with undisguised hatred. "You've made a powerful enemy today," Park said. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," Jin-Ho said coldly. "Your operation is finished. Your allies are gone. You have nothing left. The only reason you're still alive is because I'm sending you back to Busan as a message. Tell them what happens when they cross me. Tell them that the Kim family's reach extends everywhere. Tell them that I'm not my father, and I don't forgive." He gestured to Min-Soo. "Let him go, but make sure he understands that if he ever comes back to Seoul, he's dead." Park was dragged out, still cursing, still threatening. Jin-Ho watched him go, feeling nothing. This was his world. This was what he did. He had won, and that was all that mattered. The drive back to Seoul took 3 hours through the rain. Jin-Ho sat in the back seat, watching the landscape blur past, thinking about the day's events. He had achieved everything he set out to do. He had gained territory, allies, and power. He should have felt satisfied, victorious. But instead, he felt empty. It was dark when they arrived back at the mansion. Jin-Ho dismissed his men and went straight to his office, pouring himself a drink. He stood by the window, looking out at the rain-soaked city, and found his thoughts drifting to Mia. She had made this possible. Without her intelligence, without her courage in coming to him, none of this would have happened. A soft knock on the door. "Come in," he said, knowing somehow that it was her. Mia entered, wearing a simple black sweater and jeans, her braids hanging loose around her shoulders. She looked at him with concerned eyes. "I heard what happened. Are you all right?" "I'm fine. It went according to plan. Park's operation is finished. The Yakuza are our allies now. Everything worked out." "Then why do you look so—" She hesitated. "Defeated." Jin-Ho turned to face her fully. "I'm not defeated. I won today. I achieved exactly what I wanted." "Did you?" Mia asked softly. She crossed the room to stand beside him at the window. "Because you don't look like a man who just won. You look like a man who's wondering if winning was worth it." Jin-Ho was silent. This woman was too perceptive. She saw too much. "I told you," Mia continued, "that there's more to life than revenge and survival. You won today, but what did you win? More territory? More money? More enemies who will spend their lives trying to destroy you? When does it end, Jin-Ho? When do you get to just live?" "This is my life," he said firmly. "This is all I know, all I've ever known." "But it doesn't have to be," she said. "You could choose differently. You could—" "What?" he interrupted, his voice harsh. "Walk away? Pretend I'm not who I am? Pretend I haven't done the things I've done? There's no escape from this world, Mia. You, of all people, should know that." "I'm not talking about escape," she said. "I'm talking about balance, about finding moments of light in the darkness, about allowing yourself to be something more than just a king in an empire of shadows." She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small and red. Another rose, identical to the one she had given him the night before. "Do you still have the first one I gave you?" Jin-Ho glanced at his desk, where the rose sat in a small vase he had found. He had meant to throw it away, but something had stopped him. "Yes," he admitted. "Good," she said, placing the second rose beside it. "2 roses, one for yesterday, One for today. One to remind you of what you've accomplished, and one to remind you of what you could still become. Jin-Ho looked at the roses, then at her. "What are you trying to do to me?" he asked quietly. "I'm trying to save you. From yourself, from this life, from becoming so empty that you forget what it feels like to be human." Before he could respond, she stepped closer, so close he could smell her perfume, subtle and sweet with hints of vanilla and jasmine. "Jin-Ho," she said softly, "when was the last time you celebrated anything? When was the last time you allowed yourself to be happy?" He couldn't answer. He couldn't remember. "Then let me show you. Just for tonight, just for one evening, let me show you what it's like to celebrate Valentine's Day. Not because it's a holiday, not because it means anything special, but because you deserve to experience something beautiful. Because you deserve to remember that there's more to life than blood and business." Every instinct in Jin-Ho's body was screaming at him to refuse, to push her away, to maintain his walls, his control, his emotional distance. But he was tired. Tired of being alone. Tired of being cold. Tired of winning battles while losing everything that made those victories meaningful. "All right," he heard himself say. "Show me." Don't forget to subscribe to see what happens next. This story is about to take an unexpected turn. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. Mia smiled, and it was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. "Trust me," she said. "You won't regret this." She led him out of his office and down to the mansion's garage where his collection of expensive cars sat waiting. She bypassed all of them, the Lamborghini, the Ferrari, the Bentley, and instead opened the door of a simple black sedan. "We're taking this one," she said. "Something low-key. For tonight, you're not the Mafia king, you're just Jin-Ho. Just a man." They drove through the rainy streets of Seoul, Mia at the wheel. Jin-Ho watched her, noting how comfortable she seemed, how at ease. She drove with purpose, winding through the city until they reached a neighborhood Jin-Ho rarely visited, Itaewon, known for its international community and diverse restaurants. The owner, a middle-aged black man, looked up from behind the counter, and his face lit up when he saw Mia. "Mia, girl, where you been?" he called out in English, then switched to Korean for the benefit of the other diners. "Too long since you came by." "I know, Marcus. I'm sorry. I've been dealing with some things, but I brought someone special tonight." Marcus looked at Jin-Ho with interest, then nodded knowingly. "Your usual table is open. I'll bring you the special menu." They sat at a corner table, away from the few other diners. Jin-Ho felt oddly exposed without his guards, without his armor of expensive clothes and intimidating presence. Here, in this eclectic restaurant that existed between two worlds, he was just another customer. "How do you know this place?" he asked Mia. "I found it about 6 months after I moved to Seoul. I was homesick, missing real soul food, and Marcus had just opened this place. He's from Atlanta, moved to Korea for love, married a Korean woman he met online. They created this restaurant as a way to bridge their two cultures. The food is incredible." Marcus returned with plates of food. Korean fried chicken with a southern-style hot honey glaze, collard greens kimchi, mac and cheese with gochugaru, cornbread with seaweed butter, and perfectly grilled galbi short ribs. It was a fusion Jin-Ho had never imagined, let alone tasted. "Eat," Mia urged. "This is what happens when two worlds come together and create something new." Jin-Ho took a bite of the Korean fried chicken and was surprised by the explosion of flavor. Spicy, sweet, savory, all perfectly balanced. He couldn't remember the last time he had eaten something that felt this authentic, this real, this honest. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, and Jin-Ho found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in years. There was something about this place, about the simple atmosphere, about Mia's presence, that made him feel normal, human. "Tell me about America," he said suddenly. "What was it like growing up there?" Mia's eyes brightened. "It was different from this. I grew up in Brooklyn, in a neighborhood where everyone knew everyone. My dad worked as a professor at Columbia. My mom managed a small Korean grocery store. We lived between two cultures, celebrating both Chuseok and Thanksgiving, speaking Korean at home and English everywhere else. It was beautiful, honestly. I felt like I belonged to two worlds." "Why did you come back to Korea?" asked Jin-Ho. Mia's expression grew somber. After my dad died, my mom wanted to reconnect with her Korean roots. She felt disconnected from her Korean heritage after being in America for so long. She thought coming back would help her heal. And for a while, it did. She was happy here. She reconnected with old friends, found a good job, felt like she was home again. And then Park got involved, Jin-Ho finished. And then Park got involved, Mia confirmed quietly. She discovered something she wasn't supposed to know. And because she had integrity, because she believed in doing the right thing, she died. That's when I realized that sometimes the system fails. Sometimes you have to take justice into your own hands. Jin-Ho understood that better than anyone. Where did you learn your skills? The intelligence gathering, the computer work? MIT, Mia said. I have degrees in computer science and international finance. I was recruited by a few intelligence agencies when I graduated, but I turned them down because I wanted to use my skills in the private sector. Ironic, right? I turned down a career in intelligence only to end up doing exactly that to track down my mother's killer. They continued talking as they ate, sharing stories about their pasts, their families, the paths that had led them to this moment. Jin-Ho found himself opening up in ways he never had before, talking about his father, his childhood, the weight of the legacy he carried. Mia listened without judgment, without trying to fix him, just accepting him as he was. After dinner, they walked through the neighborhood despite the rain, which had softened to a gentle drizzle. Mia had an umbrella, and they huddled under it together, their shoulders touching. The streets were alive with people from all over the world. American soldiers, English teachers, diplomats, students, all creating a small international oasis in the heart of Seoul. Thank you for this, Jin-Ho said suddenly, for showing me this place, for giving me this evening. I didn't realize how much I needed it. Everyone needs moments like this, Mia said. Moments where they can just be themselves, where they don't have to be strong or in control or anything other than human, where they can just exist. They walked a bit further, and Mia stopped in front of a small park, its trees strung with lights that glowed softly in the rain. Come on, she said, pulling him toward a bench under a large tree. They sat together, watching the rain fall through the lights, creating a kind of magical effect. It was quiet except for the gentle patter of raindrops and the distant sounds of the city. Jin-Ho felt a peace he couldn't remember ever feeling before. Mia, he said quietly, why are you doing this? Really? She turned to look at him, her dark eyes reflecting the park lights. Because I see something in you that you don't see in yourself. I see a man who's capable of more than just violence and power. I see someone who's been hurt, who's built walls to protect himself, but who still has the capacity to feel, to care, to love. And I think that person deserves a chance to exist as just for one night. Jin-Ho felt something crack inside his chest, something he had kept locked away for years. I don't know if I can be that person, he admitted. I don't know if I remember how. Then let me remind you, Mia said softly. She reached up and gently touched his face, her fingers warm against his skin. Jin-Ho looked at her, at this remarkable woman who had crashed into his life and turned everything upside down, and he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Hope that maybe he could be more than just the Mafia king. Hope that maybe there was still something inside him worth saving. Mia, he whispered, She leaned forward and kissed him, gentle and soft, like a question. Jin-Ho froze for a moment, overwhelmed by the sensation, by the vulnerability of it. Then, slowly, carefully, he kissed her back, allowing himself to feel the warmth of her lips, the tenderness of the moment, the possibility of something more. When they pulled apart, they were both breathing a little harder. Mia smiled at him, a real smile, warm and genuine. See, she said, not so scary, is it, allowing yourself to feel? Jin-Ho couldn't help but smile back, a rare expression on his usually cold face. No, he agreed, not so scary. They sat together on that bench for a long time, talking and laughing and simply existing in each other's presence. For the first time in his life, Jin-Ho celebrated Valentine's Day, not with grand gestures or expensive gifts, but with simple human connection, with warmth and laughter, and the beginning of something he couldn't quite name, but desperately wanted to explore. By the time they returned to the mansion, it was past midnight. Jin-Ho walked Mia to her room, both of them reluctant to let the evening end. "Thank you," he said again at her door, "for everything. For tonight, for reminding me that there's more to life than what I've been living. Thank you for letting me, for trusting me enough to show you." She started to go inside, then turned back. "Jin-Ho, this doesn't have to be just one night. It can be a beginning, if you want it to be." Jin-Ho thought about that, about what it would mean to let her into his life, to allow himself to feel things he had sworn off years ago. It was dangerous. It was risky. It went against everything he had built his empire on. But for the first time, he found himself willing to take that risk. "I'd like that," he said quietly. "I'd like to see where this goes." Mia's smile was radiant. "Good. Then I'll see you tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that." She kissed him once more, quick and sweet, then disappeared into her room. Jin-Ho stood in the hallway for a moment, feeling something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Happiness. If you've made it this far, you're amazing. Drop a comment and let me know. Should Jin-Ho and Mia's relationship continue to develop, or is this too dangerous for both of them? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more intense romantic thrillers. The next few weeks passed in a way that Jin-Ho could never have predicted. He still ran his empire with the same ruthless efficiency, still made the hard decisions, still maintained his iron grip on the Korean underworld. But now there was something else in his life, someone else. Mia became a fixture in his world, but not in the way he had expected. She didn't try to change him or reform him. She simply existed alongside him, providing a counterbalance to the darkness of his work. When he came home from a particularly brutal negotiation, she would be there with a smile and intelligent conversation. When he was stressed about a rival gang's movements, she would suggest they take a walk or watch a movie, reminding him that not everything had to be solved with violence and intimidation. She taught him to cook, claiming that it was a useful skill and also a form of meditation. Jin-Ho, who had never prepared a meal in his life, found himself standing in the mansion's kitchen at odd hours, learning how to properly season meat and balance flavors. Mia taught him dishes from both her heritages, Korean classics like kimchi jjigae and American soul food like her grandmother's peach cobbler. It was absurd. It was beneath him, but he found himself enjoying it, enjoying the simple act of creating something with his hands, enjoying Mia's patient instruction and occasional teasing when he made mistakes. They fell into a routine. Jin-Ho would handle his business during the day, and in the evenings they would spend time together, sometimes at the mansion, sometimes venturing out to quiet places around the city, where Jin-Ho could be anonymous. Mia showed him parts of Seoul he had never bothered to explore, international neighborhoods and hidden bookshops and street food vendors who made the best tteokbokki he had ever tasted. His men noticed the change in him. Min-soo had pulled him aside one day, concern evident on his weathered face. "Boss," he had said carefully, "are you sure about this woman? I know she's been helpful, but she's still an outsider, American. You can't let your guard down." "I know what I'm doing," he replied, though he wasn't entirely sure that was true. "I hope so," Min-soo had said, "because the men are starting to talk. They're saying you've gone soft, that you're distracted. Your enemies will notice, and when they do—" Jin-Ho understood the warning. In his world, any sign of weakness was an invitation for attack. But he had also realized that he no longer cared as much as he should. For years, he had been nothing but the Mafia king, nothing but the cold, calculating leader who felt nothing and feared nothing. Now, for the first time, he was something more. He was a man who laughed, a man who looked forward to coming home, a man who had something to lose. And yes, that made him vulnerable, but it also made him feel alive. One evening, about a month after Valentine's Day, Jin-Ho came home to find Mia in his office, sitting at his desk with a serious expression. He had given her access to most of the mansion now, trusting her in ways he had never trusted anyone. "We need to talk," she said as he entered. Jin-Ho's instincts immediately went on alert. Those words never preceded anything good. "What's wrong?" Mia pulled up something on his computer and turned the screen toward him. It was an intercepted communication, part of his routine intelligence gathering. "I was reviewing today's intel when I found this. It's from the Yakuza. They're planning to move against you." Jin-Ho read the message, his jaw tightening. It was a conversation between Takahashi and another Yakuza lieutenant discussing Jin-Ho's recent distraction and how it might be exploited. They were planning to test his defenses, to probe for weaknesses. If they found any, they would move to take over his operations. "When did this come in?" Jin-Ho asked. 2 hours ago, Mia said. "I only just decrypted it." "Jin-Ho, they're using me as evidence of your weakness. They think that because you've allowed a woman into your life, you've lost your edge." Jin-Ho felt a cold fury building in his chest. "They're wrong." "Are they?" Mia asked quietly. "Jin-Ho, I've changed you. We both know it. You're not as ruthless as you were. You hesitate now. You consider options other than violence. Those are good changes for your soul. But in your world, they're dangerous." "So what are you saying?" Jin-Ho demanded. "That I should go back to being what I was? That I should push you away?" "I'm saying you need to show them that you're still the king, that you haven't gone soft, that loving someone doesn't make you weak. It makes you more dangerous because now you have something to protect." Jin-Ho looked at her, at this woman who understood his world perhaps better than he did. "What do you suggest?" "Set a trap," said Mia. "Let them think they're exploiting a weakness. Let them make their move, and then crush them so completely that no one will ever question your strength again." Jin-Ho smiled grimly. She was right. It was time to remind everyone why he was the king. Over the next week, Jin-Ho carefully crafted his trap. He let slip through controlled channels that he would be attending a private dinner at an upscale restaurant, bringing Mia with him. He arranged for minimal security, making it look like he had grown complacent, arrogant in his power. He made it seem like the perfect opportunity for an attack. The Yakuza took the bait. Jin-Ho's intelligence network picked up their preparations. They were planning to strike at the restaurant, to kill him and Mia both, to make it look like a rival gang's work and claim his territory in the chaos that would follow. What they didn't know was that Jin-Ho had arranged for his best men to be hidden throughout the restaurant and surrounding buildings. What they didn't know was that every server, every chef, every person in that building would be one of his operatives. What they didn't know was that they were walking into a death trap. On the night of the planned attack, Jin-Ho and Mia arrived at the restaurant dressed in elegant formal wear. Jin-Ho wore a tailored black suit, Mia a stunning red dress that complemented her dark skin beautifully, her braids styled in an elegant updo. They played their parts perfectly. The powerful man distracted by a beautiful woman, the couple too absorbed in each other to notice danger approaching. The Yakuza assassins arrived 20 minutes into their meal. There were 6 of them, professionals, armed with silenced weapons. They moved through the restaurant with practiced efficiency, heading toward Jin-Ho's table. They never made it. Jin-Ho gave the signal, a subtle gesture with his wineglass, and his men emerged from their hiding places. The assassins found themselves surrounded, outnumbered, and completely outmaneuvered. The entire confrontation was over in less than 2 minutes. The assassins were disarmed and subdued without a single shot being fired. Jin-Ho stood, straightening his suit, and walked over to where the assassins were held. Takahashi was among them, his face pale with shock and fury. "Did you really think I didn't know?" Jin-Ho asked coldly. "Did you really think I would let myself become weak, vulnerable? You mistook kindness for softness. You mistook love for liability. That was your fatal error." He gestured to his men, who dragged the assassins toward the back of the restaurant where vehicles were waiting. "You're going back to Japan with a message," Jin-Ho told Takahashi. "Tell your bosses that the Kim family is stronger than ever. Tell them that attacking me was the worst decision they could have made. And tell them that if they ever try again, I will burn their operations to the ground." Takahashi was dragged away, and Jin-Ho returned to his table where Mia waited. She smiled at him, pride evident in her eyes. "Well done," she said. "You've just reminded everyone why they fear you." "We did it together," Jin-Ho said, taking her hand. "You were right. Having something to protect doesn't make me weak. It makes me more dangerous than I ever have been." They finished their meal in peace, the restaurant now empty except for Jin-Ho's men. When they finally left, walking out into the cool night air, Jin-Ho felt a profound sense of satisfaction. He had proven himself. He had shown that he could have both, his empire and his humanity.
But the peace didn't last. 2 days later, Jin-Ho received news that shook him to his core. Park Dong-jun had been found dead in Busan. He had been killed execution style, a single bullet to the head. The Busan faction was in chaos, scrambling to fill the power vacuum. Jin-Ho should have been pleased. Park was a rival, an enemy, the man who had killed Mia's mother. His death meant one less threat to Jin-Ho's empire and justice for Mia. But something felt wrong about it. He hadn't ordered the hit, and when he checked with his intelligence network, he found no evidence that it had been the work of the Yakuza or any other faction, which meant it was an inside job. Someone from Park's own organization had betrayed him. Jin-Ho went to find Mia, needing to tell her about Park's death before she heard it from someone else. He found her in the library, reading by the fireplace. She looked up as he entered and immediately saw the expression on his face. "What happened?" she asked, setting down her book. "Park is dead," Jin-Ho said quietly. "He was killed in Busan 2 days ago." Mia's face showed a complex mix of emotions: shock, relief, something that might have been grief. "How?" "Execution. Professional. Someone close to him." Mia was silent for a long moment, processing the information. Then she stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city. "Do you know who did it?" "Not yet," Jin-Ho said. "But I will. I've put my best people on it." "He's really dead," Mia said softly, more to herself than to Jin-Ho. "The man who killed my mother is really dead." Jin-Ho moved to stand beside her. "You should feel vindicated. You got your revenge." "I don't feel vindicated," Mia said, her voice breaking. "I feel empty. I spent 3 years planning, preparing, obsessing over bringing him to justice, and now that he's gone, I don't feel satisfaction. I just feel tired, and my mother is still dead." Jin-Ho pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "Revenge never feels the way we think it will," he said quietly. "It doesn't bring back what we've lost. It doesn't fill the holes in our hearts. It just creates more emptiness." Mia cried quietly against his chest, and Jin-Ho held her, offering what comfort he could. It was a strange moment, mourning a man who had been an enemy, grieving not for the person but for the futility of revenge, for the realization that justice and closure were 2 very different things. Later that evening, Jin-Ho received the full intelligence report on Park's death. What he read made his blood run cold. Park had been killed by one of his own lieutenants, a man named Choi. The reason? Choi had been working with a rival faction from Shanghai, and Park's death had been part of a larger plan to destabilize the Korean underworld and allow the Shanghai group to move in. But the truly disturbing part was buried in the details. The Shanghai faction had been in contact with someone in Jin-Ho's own organization. They knew inside information about his operations, his movements, his relationships. Someone close to him was feeding them intelligence. There was a traitor in his mix. Jin-Ho called an emergency meeting with his top lieutenants, Min-soo, and 3 others who had been with him for years. They gathered in his private war room, a windowless space deep in the mansion where Jin-Ho conducted his most sensitive business. "We have a problem," Jin-Ho said without preamble, laying out the intelligence report. "Someone in our organization is working with the Shanghai faction. They know too much about our operations, and if we don't find the leak soon, they'll use that information to destroy us." His men exchanged glances, faces grim. Betrayal was the worst crime in their world, punishable by death. "Do we have any leads?" Min-soo asked. "I'm working on it," Jin-Ho said. "But in the meantime, we need to limit information flow. No one outside this room knows about our most sensitive operations. We tell the other men what they need to know and nothing more. And we watch everyone carefully. The traitor will make a mistake eventually." Over the next few days, Jin-Ho threw himself into the investigation with single-minded intensity. He reviewed every communication, every operation, every person who had access to sensitive information. It was exhausting, paranoid work, but necessary. He couldn't afford to have a traitor in his organization. Mia helped where she could, using her skills with computers to trace communications and track down leads. She had proven herself invaluable in intelligence gathering, and Jin-Ho trusted her completely, which made it all the more devastating when Min-soo pulled him aside one evening with new information.
"Boss," Min-soo said, his face troubled. "I found something. It's about Mia Chen." Jin-Ho felt his stomach drop. "What about her?" Min-soo pulled out a folder and opened it, revealing a series of documents and photographs. "I was digging into her background, trying to verify everything she told us. Most of it checks out, the mother in Korea, the father who died, her education. But there are gaps. 3 years ago, before Park killed her mother, there's a 6-month period where she disappeared. No records, no paper trail. I finally tracked down what she was doing." He pulled out a photograph. It showed Mia with a group of people in what looked like a military training facility. "She was in Israel," Min-soo said, "taking advanced intelligence and security training, the kind of training that's usually reserved for Mossad operatives and deep-cover agents." Jin-Ho stared at the photograph, feeling the world tilt beneath his feet. Why would she need that kind of training? "I don't know," Min-soo said. "But boss, think about it. She shows up right when Park's operation is vulnerable. She has perfect intelligence on his activities. She's skilled with computers, encryption, analysis. She knows exactly how to manipulate situations to her advantage. What if she's been playing a longer game than we thought?" "No," Jin-Ho said firmly. "Mia isn't the traitor. She's helped us. She's the reason we secured the Yakuza deal initially. She's the reason we've strengthened our position." "Or maybe that's exactly what she wanted," Min-soo said carefully. "Maybe making you stronger was part of her plan. Makes you a more valuable target for whoever she's really working for." Jin-Ho wanted to dismiss it. He wanted to tell Min-soo he was wrong, that he was being paranoid. But he couldn't ignore the evidence. The timing was suspicious. Mia's skills were remarkably convenient, and there were gaps in her story. "Don't say anything to her yet," Jin-Ho said finally, "and don't tell anyone else about this. I'll handle it." After Min-soo left, Jin-Ho sat alone in his office, the folder open in front of him. He stared at the photograph of Mia at the Israeli training facility, trying to reconcile it with the woman who had shown him tenderness, who had reminded him how to be human, who had made him believe that love was possible, even in his dark world. Was it all a lie? Had she been manipulating him from the start? The thought made him sick, but he couldn't ignore the possibility. In his world, trust was a luxury and betrayal was commonplace. He had been a fool to think it could be different with her. But there was another possibility. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe the training had been for self-defense, for protection. Maybe she had been planning to take down Park and had wanted the skills to do so safely. Maybe there was a good reason for everything. Jin-Ho made a decision. He would confront her directly. He would give her a chance to explain, and then he would decide whether to trust his instincts or the evidence. He found her in her room, working on her laptop. She looked up and smiled when he entered, but the smile faded when she saw his expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, closing the laptop. Jin-Ho pulled out the photograph and placed it on the desk in front of her. "Tell me about Israel." Mia looked at the photograph and all the color drained from her face. She was silent for a long moment, then slowly lifted her eyes to meet his. "How did you find this?" "That doesn't matter," Jin-Ho said coldly, reverting to the hard, emotionless persona he had worn for so long. "What matters is that you lied to me. You didn't tell me about your training. You didn't tell me that you have skills way beyond what a financial consultant would need. So I'm asking you now, who are you really, and what do you want from me?" Mia stood, her hands trembling slightly. "Jin-Ho, I can explain." "Then explain," he demanded, "because right now it looks like you've been lying to me from the beginning. It looks like you've been using me. And in my world, that's a death sentence. What do you think? Is Mia really a traitor, or is there more to the story? Comment below with your theories, and make sure you're subscribed with the notifications on, because you won't want to miss the explosive conclusion. Mia took a deep breath, visibly steeling herself. "You're right. I did lie to you. Not about everything, but about some things, important things. I went to Israel 3 years ago for specialized training because I was preparing to take down Park's operation." Jin-Ho crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. "Go on." "When my father died and my mother and I moved back to Korea, I thought we'd have a fresh start. My mother got a job with one of Park's legitimate businesses. For about a year, everything seemed fine. But then she discovered something, financial irregularities that pointed to money laundering. She's always been someone with integrity, so she started documenting everything, planning to go to the authorities." She moved to the window, her back to Jin-Ho. "Park found out. He tried to buy her silence first, then threatened her. When that didn't work, he had her killed. Made it look like an accident."
The police closed the case within a week. No investigation, no justice, nothing. "And that's when you decided to get revenge," Jin-Ho said. "That's when I decided to get justice," Mia corrected, turning to face him. "But I realized I couldn't do it alone. I couldn't just walk into his operation and take him down. I needed skills, real skills. So I used some of my father's connections, he'd worked in diplomatic security, to arrange training in Israel. 6 months of intensive instruction in intelligence gathering, cybersecurity, surveillance, infiltration techniques." "Why didn't you tell me this from the beginning?" Jin-Ho asked. "Because I didn't know if I could trust you," Mia said bluntly. "I came to you with intelligence about Park because I needed your power to take him down, but I didn't know if you were any better than him. For all I knew, you'd just use me and discard me. Or worse, turn me over to Park for leverage. I had to be careful." Jin-Ho was silent, processing her words. She was right to have been cautious. He would have done the same in her position. "What about everything else?" Jin-Ho asked quietly. "Valentine's Day, the restaurant, teaching me to cook. All of that. Was that part of your plan too?" Mia's eyes filled with tears. "No," she said firmly. "That was real. Jin-Ho, I may have come here with an agenda, but everything that happened after, that was real. I didn't plan to care about you. I didn't plan to fall for you, but I did." "How can I believe you?" Jin-Ho asked, and he hated how vulnerable he sounded. "How can I trust anything you say when you've already lied to me?" "Because I'm telling you the truth now," Mia said, stepping closer. "I could have kept lying. I could have come up with a cover story for the Israel training, but I didn't. I'm telling you everything because you deserve the truth, and because I love you." The words hung in the air between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Jin-Ho felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, trying to decide whether to step back to safety or leap into the unknown. "I love you," Mia repeated, her voice breaking. "I know I don't have the right to say that after lying to you. I know you have every reason not to believe me. But it's true. You've shown me a kind of strength and vulnerability that I didn't think could exist together.
You've made me believe that even in this dark world, there can be moments of light. And I can't lose that. I can't lose you." Jin-Ho looked at her, at this woman who had turned his world upside down, and he realized he was facing the most important decision of his life. He could choose to trust the evidence, to believe that she was just another player in the game, another person trying to use him for her own ends, or he could choose to trust his instincts, to believe that what they had shared was real, that love could exist even in a world of betrayal and violence. It was the hardest choice he had ever made. But in the end, it wasn't really a choice at all. "I believe you," he said quietly. "God help me, but I believe you." Mia's face crumpled with relief, and she closed the distance between them, throwing her arms around him. Jin-Ho held her tightly, feeling her tears against his neck, feeling his own eyes burning with emotion he had suppressed for so long. "I'm sorry," Mia whispered. "I'm so sorry I lied. I'm sorry I hurt you." "I understand why you did it," Jin-Ho said. "In your position, I would have done the same. We're survivors, you and I. We do what we have to do to stay alive." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other, finding strength in their shared vulnerability. Finally, Jin-Ho pulled back and looked at her seriously. "But there's still the matter of the traitor in my organization. If it's not you, then who is it? The Shanghai faction still has inside information. Someone is still feeding them intelligence." Mia opened her eyes, her expression hardening with determination. "Then we find them, together. You have the manpower and the connections. I have the technical skills and the training. Between us, we can root out whoever is betraying you." Jin-Ho nodded. She was right. Together, they were stronger than apart. "All right, let's do this." Over the next 2 days, Jin-Ho and Mia worked around the clock, analyzing communications, reviewing personnel files, tracking financial transactions. They cross-referenced everyone who had access to sensitive information with unusual activity or suspicious connections. It was painstaking work. But slowly, a pattern began to emerge. The leak was coming from the accounting department. Someone who had access to financial records was feeding information to the Shanghai faction about Jin-Ho's money laundering operations, his offshore accounts, his legitimate business fronts. The transactions were small and carefully hidden, but they were there. Jin-Ho called Min-Soo to his office and showed him the evidence. "It's Lee Jin-Woo," he said, pointing to the financial analyst who had been with his organization for 3 years. "He's been selling us out to Shanghai." Min-Soo's face darkened with rage. "I'll take care of it, boss." "No," Jin-Ho said. "We're going to use him. We're going to feed him false information and let Shanghai act on a bad intelligence. When they make their move based on bad intelligence, we'll be ready for them." It was a dangerous gambit, but it was the only way to both eliminate the traitor and destroy the Shanghai faction's attempt to move into Korean territory. Over the next week, Jin-Ho carefully orchestrated the misinformation campaign. He made it seem like he was moving a large shipment of cash to an offshore account through a specific port. He let Lee overhear conversations about the timing, the security, the routes. He made it look like an easy target. The Shanghai faction took the bait. Their operatives moved to intercept the shipment, planning to steal the money and embarrass Jin-Ho in the process. What they found instead was an empty warehouse and Jin-Ho's men waiting for them. The confrontation was brutal but efficient. The Shanghai operatives were captured, their weapons confiscated, their communications seized. Jin-Ho interrogated them personally and extracted a full confession about their operations, their contacts, and their plans for expanding into Korea. Lee Jin-Woo, the traitor, tried to run when he realized the trap had been sprung. He didn't get far. Jin-Ho's men brought him back to the mansion, where Jin-Ho was waiting in his office. "Why?" Jin-Ho asked simply, looking at the man who had betrayed him. Lee was trembling, his face pale with fear. "They paid me," he stammered. "I have gambling debts. I needed the money. I didn't have a choice." "You always have a choice," Jin-Ho said coldly. "You chose money over loyalty. You chose betrayal over honor. And now you'll pay the price for that choice."
Jin-Ho nodded to Min-Soo, who dragged Lee out of the office. Jin-Ho didn't need explicit orders. Everyone knew what happened to traitors. After they left, Jin-Ho sat alone in his office, feeling the weight of what he had just done. He had eliminated the threat to his organization, destroyed the Shanghai faction's foothold in Korea, and sent a clear message to anyone who might think about betraying him in the future. But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like necessity, like survival. Mia appeared in the doorway, her expression understanding. "It's done?" she asked. "It's done," Jin-Ho confirmed. She crossed the room and sat on the edge of his desk, taking his hand. "I know this is hard for you. I know you hate having to do these things." "It's part of who I am," Jin-Ho said. "Part of what I do. I can't change that." "I'm not asking you to. I know what you are, Jin-Ho. I've always known, and I love you anyway. Not in spite of the darkness, but with full knowledge of it. You don't have to hide that part of yourself from me." Jin-Ho looked at her, at this remarkable woman who understood him in ways no one else ever had. "How did you get so wise?" he asked. "I'm not wise," Mia said with a small smile. "I'm just someone who's learned that people are complicated, that we can be both light and dark, both gentle and ruthless, both loving and dangerous, and that's okay. That's what makes us human." Jin-Ho pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. "What do we do now? Where do we go from here?" "Wherever we want," Mia said. "Together." Hit that subscribe button if you want to see how this love story ends. We're almost at the conclusion, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. The next few months were a period of consolidation and growth for Jin-Ho's organization. With the Shanghai faction eliminated and the Busan territory now under his control, his empire expanded significantly. He was now the undisputed king of the Korean underworld, with connections stretching across Asia. His power was absolute. But more importantly, his life had changed in fundamental ways. Mia had moved from the guest wing to his private quarters, and they had settled into a partnership that went beyond romance. She became his most trusted advisor, using her intelligence and training to help him navigate the complex web of alliances and rivalries that defined his world. Together, they were formidable. Jin-Ho found himself changing in subtle ways. He was still ruthless when necessary, still capable of making the hard decisions that his position required, but he also showed more mercy, more strategic thinking, more willingness to find solutions that didn't involve violence. His men noticed the change, and while some were skeptical at first, they came to appreciate that their boss was more effective than ever. On the anniversary of that first Valentine's Day, exactly 1 year after Mia had first come to his mansion, Jin-Ho planned a surprise. He took her back to Seoul and Seoul Kitchen, the place where they had shared their first real meal together. Marcus greeted them warmly, delighted to see them again. They ate the same fusion dishes they had shared a year ago, and Jin-Ho marveled at how much it changed. A year ago, he was a man who felt nothing, who believed nothing beyond power and control. Now, he was someone who understood that strength came in many forms, that vulnerability was not weakness, that love was the most powerful weapon of all, because it gave you something to fight for. After dinner, they walked to the same park where they had shared their first kiss, the trees once again strung with lights. They sat on the same bench, watching the evening unfold around them. "Do you remember what you said to me a year ago?" Jin-Ho asked. "You said this didn't have to be just one night, that it could be a beginning."
"I remember," Mia said. "You were right," Jin-Ho said. "It was a beginning, the beginning of everything. You changed my life, Mia. You made me believe that I could be more than just the Mafia king, that I could be a man, a person, someone capable of loving and being loved." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Mia's eyes widened as he opened it, revealing a ring, simple, elegant, with a single diamond that caught the light from the park lamps. "I know we live in a dangerous world," Jin-Ho said. "I know that tomorrow isn't guaranteed, but I want whatever tomorrows we have to be together. Mia Chen, will you marry me?" Mia's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she whispered. Yes, absolutely yes. Jin-Ho slipped the ring onto her finger, and they kissed as the lights sparkled around them, as the world continued turning, as life went on in all its complicated beauty. They had found each other in the darkness, and together they had created something that neither of them had thought possible, a future filled with hope. The wedding took place 3 months later in a private ceremony at the mansion. Only a handful of people attended, Min-soo and a few trusted men from Jin-Ho's organization, Marcus from the restaurant, and a few of Mia's friends from the international community. It was small and intimate, a far cry from the elaborate ceremonies that someone of Jin-Ho's wealth and status might have been expected to have. But it was perfect. Jin-Ho stood at the altar watching Mia walk toward him, and for the first time in his life, he felt complete. She was wearing a simple white dress with African-inspired detailing, carrying a bouquet of red roses, a callback to that first rose she had given him, the one that had started everything. Her braids were styled in an elegant crown, and she looked radiant. When she reached him, she was smiling, and he couldn't help but smile back. The ceremony was short but meaningful. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to stand by each other through darkness and light, through danger and peace, through all the complicated realities of their shared life. When they were pronounced husband and wife, Jin-Ho kissed her with a tenderness that would have shocked anyone who knew him only as the cold Mafia king. That evening, they hosted a small reception in the mansion's garden, which Mia had decorated with lanterns and flowers. As they danced together under the stars, Jin-Ho reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. It had started with gunshots and betrayal, with fear and desperation, with two people using each other for their own ends. But it had transformed into something real, something worth protecting, something that gave meaning to all the violence and darkness that surrounded them. "Thank you," Jin-Ho said, as they swayed to the music. "For what?" Mia asked. "For teaching me that Valentine's Day isn't just a day for weak people, for teaching me that love isn't a liability, it's the strongest thing in the world, for saving me from becoming a monster." "You were never a monster," Mia said gently. "You were just a man who had forgotten how to be human. I just reminded you." "Well, thank you for reminding me, and thank you for choosing me even knowing everything I am." "Thank you for choosing me," Mia replied, "even after I lied to you, even after you had every reason not to trust me. Thank you for taking that leap of faith." They continued dancing as the night deepened, as their guests laughed and celebrated around them, as the world outside the mansion walls continued its endless cycle of conflict and ambition. But inside those walls, in that moment, there was only peace, only love, only the knowledge that they had found each other against all odds and had created something beautiful in a world that so often destroyed beauty. As the song ended and another began, Jin-Ho whispered in Mia's ear, "Every Valentine's Day from now on, I want to celebrate with you, every single one for the rest of our lives." Mia pulled back to look at him, her eyes shining with tears of happiness. "I'd like that. Though maybe next year we can celebrate without any assassination attempts or criminal conspiracies." Jin-Ho laughed, a sound that still felt new and wonderful every time it happened. "I'll do my best. No promises, though. This is still my world." "Our world," Mia corrected. "It's our world now, and we'll face it together." "Together," Jin-Ho agreed, pulling her close again. The years that followed were not without their challenges. Jin-Ho still had enemies, still faced threats from rival organizations, still had to make difficult decisions that weighed on his conscience. But through it all, Mia was there beside him, his partner in every sense of the word. She helped him navigate the treacherous waters of the criminal underworld, while also reminding him of the humanity that existed beyond it. They had children eventually, a son and a daughter who grew up in both their heritages, learning Korean and English, celebrating both Chuseok and Thanksgiving, understanding that their father was a powerful man, but also knowing him as someone who cooked breakfast on Sunday mornings, who read them bedtime stories, who showed them strength and tenderness were not opposing forces, but complementary ones. Jin-Ho gradually began to shift his operations away from the most violent aspects of his business, focusing instead on the more legitimate enterprises he had built over the years. It was a slow process, one that would take decades to complete, but he was committed to it. He wanted to leave his children a different legacy than the one he had inherited, not an empire of blood and fear, but a foundation of strength and wisdom. And every Valentine's Day, without fail, Jin-Ho and Mia would return to that park bench under the lit trees. They would sit together, sometimes talking about the year that had passed, sometimes simply enjoying the silence, always grateful for the journey they had shared. Jin-Ho would bring roses, always red roses, and Mia would remind him of how far he had come from the cold, emotionless man he had been. "Do you ever regret it?" Mia asked him one Valentine's Day, many years after they had first met. They were older now, with silver threading through their hair, with lines on their faces that told the story of lives well lived. "Do you ever wish you had stayed the way you were, cold and untouchable?" Jin-Ho thought about it, looking at his wife, at the woman who had transformed his world. "Not for a single moment," he said. "You gave me something I didn't even know I was missing. You gave me a reason to be more than just a king. You gave me love, and that's worth more than any empire." Mia smiled and leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Jin-Ho Kim." "I love you too, Mia Kim. Thank you for celebrating Valentine's Day with me. Thank you for celebrating every day with me." As they sat together on that bench, watching the lights sparkle and the world move around them, Jin-Ho realized that this was his greatest victory. Not the territory he had conquered, not the enemies he had defeated or the wealth he had accumulated. His greatest victory was the simple moment of peace, of love, of connection with another human being. This was what made life worth living. This was what gave everything else meaning. The Korean Mafia king never celebrated Valentine's Day until she showed up, and now he couldn't imagine celebrating any other way. If you made it to the end of this epic love story, you're a true fan. Make sure to like this video, leave a comment telling me what you thought of Jin-Ho and Mia's journey, and subscribe for more amazing romantic thrillers. What other stories would you like to see? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, love can bloom even in the darkest places. Sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to show you the light. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.